score. There's too many MCs, not enough mics. I'll be playing Mr. Big. I'm gonna get you, sucker. I play my enemies like a game of chess.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from the MtG, and I am excited. It turns out, if you can't tell, this is probably my favorite budget deck that I've made in a really, really long time. This is mono green mid-range or stompy, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't function like a traditional stompy aggro deck, really. It's more of a mid-range rampy thing, but it turns out it's really, really fun, and we can build that for like $7. So here it is. Well, we're playing 33 creatures in the deck. That's an awful lot of creatures. It's sort of modeled after the red-green devotion thing. You know, we're just playing huge creatures that we're ramping into. I wanted to see what we could do with mono-green budget with that sort of philosophy. So, with that in mind, we're playing 10 mana dorks. Normally, I would just be like, these are the mana dorks, and just put them all on the screen. But I think they all serve certain functions that are all vital to the deck, so I'm going to go through them one by one. First of all, we're playing 2 copies of Honored Hierarch. Don't go to the comments section just yet. Honored Hierarch is a little bit better than I thought it would even be, honestly. We can't play Mystic because we're not playing any Theros. If you've got Mystics, play those for the next couple of months. But what does a 1/1 for 1 mana do in this format? It can block and kill or swing right through because they usually don't want to trade it, which is what will happen. A Foundry Street Denizen. Lightning Berserker is a big one drop right now in the format. It's not on the board when this swings, usually gets renowned. Doesn't interact well with Monastery Swiftspear, that kind of sucks. But against, Hangerback Walker, if there's just a 1/1 Hangerback Walker, they usually let this through so that they can continue to build their Walker. Abbot of Carol Keep, an unprowessed Abbot of Carol Keep, this will swing right through or trade with. Kytheon, they don't want to trade Kytheon for this. You're more than willing to make that trade, so they probably won't swing in with their Kytheon, and any other white 1-drop for that matter. So cool interactions with this card in the format. Very often will go around, especially against the mid-range and control decks. Mid-range doesn't really want to trade their Elvish Mystic for this 9 times out of 10. So lots of ways this can and will go around, and I do like the card, it turns out. Especially when you got a 2/2 Vigilance, that's not bad, honestly, if we're trying to play Stompy here. 1 mana 2/2, that can also attack and tap for mana the same turn. I mean, there's really nothing to dislike about the card other than sometimes it won't go renowned, but when it doesn't go renowned, it will often end up trading, which is just fine by you a lot of the time too. We're playing 4 copies of Whisper of the Wilds. This thing's an all-star, it turns out. On turn 3 you can run this out, and then turn 4 usually follow up with a Suruc or a Temur Sabertooth, but oftentimes a Surrak. And then next turn with a land you can play a 6-drop, or without a land you can play a 5-drop. That's really cool, being able to drop Surrak 3rd turn, then untap on the 4th turn and play a 5-drop without having to have a land. That's really cool. If you do, 6-drops are really awesome on the 4th turn. So Whisper of the Wilds does a lot of really cool things. If we can just play any of our 4-drops on the 3rd turn after playing this guy, he will instantly get ferocious. So really, really ended up liking him more than I thought I would. 4 copies of Leaf Gilder, something else I like more than I thought I would. A lot of the same things that apply to Honored Hierarch apply to this. This swings through or kills, trades with. A lot of the things in the format that are important now, pretty much everything in Goblins, that's cool. A lot of the things in the other opposing elf decks, a lot of opposing aggro decks. This will block and kill 99% of their creatures, which is really cool. But aside from that, it also is a mana dork and can help us get to our higher drops. So this really doesn't do anything we don't want it to do. Good card. Still doing 2-drops here. Here's 4 copies of Air of the Wilds. I think it's really important because aggro is one of our least favorable matchups. We really don't want to face off against pure aggro at the end of the day. Even though I just said, this is good against aggro, this is good against aggro. Aggro is still our very, very worst matchup because it goes way up under anything we're trying to do. We saw that at PT Origins with Red-Green Devotion versus Red Aggro. It just goes way up under anything that a ramp deck is trying to do. So we need Air of the Wilds against other aggro decks. We've got to have it. It trades with literally everything, and against opposing mid-range decks, it also trades with everything. I mean, Air of the Wilds is just a good card and benefits from the 15, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about Whisper of the Wilds, 15 creatures in the deck with power 4 or greater. Only, is a good defensive creature, is a good offensive creature. I don't see any reason not to play the full play set of Heir. 4 copies of Abzan Beastmaster. Yeah, as far as the budget build goes, we really don't have that many options with 3-drops. I think this is definitely the best. Again, we're playing 15 things that we can draw cards off of with this because, our toughness is also very high with those cards. Usually Abzan Beastmaster, especially in multiples, can help us go very long and helps us in turtley games. We gotta have something to, you know, sustain us. We have to have an amount of sustainability and fuel us and keep us going. And this is very important. When you get multiples, it's godlike. The card is ridiculous. 3 Surrak the Hunt Collar. This thing is sort of the glue in the deck, honestly. It holds the whole thing together. Really, really like Surrak in the deck. Lots of cool interactions. Again, oftentimes running this out on the 3rd turn, following it up with something that we will automatically get haste with, you know. So, and that ends up being very, very cool. Whether we're playing a 5 or a 6 drop, we can end up giving that thing haste and Surrak swinging for 5 too. So, really not anything I don't like about Surrak. He really does a lot for the deck. And as far as especially a budget option goes, absolute best 4 drop we can play. 2 copies of Temur Sabertooth that started off as more, but I ended up just playing the 2. Really cool interactions against, you know, mass removal and even spot removal. Of course, it doesn't beat Languish. It does return a creature to your hand against Languish, but doesn't save itself, which is kind of meh. And Languish is an important card, but spot removal also pretty important. And even though it is in Lightning Strike range, it can save itself from Lightning Strike. And, you know, here's Downfall, Ultimate Price, things like that. So I think it's a pretty darn good card, and it's a 4 mana, 4 power guy. On top of that, can save 2 of our creatures, himself and something else, from removal, and just, again, no reason not to play him. Cool interactions with some things, although we don't have too many, you know, enter the battlefield effects, really hardly any. This does create an engine with Abzan Beastmaster, which can be really cool, but only really relevant in very long games. So, but good card altogether. We can all agree. Temur Sabertooth's good. Now we're getting into the real meat. There's 2 copies of Outland Colossus in the deck. This thing's crazy. We are playing a Rogue's Passage to help this get through, and some of our other things. I mean, we want things to get through for damage. We're a huge, meaty creature deck. That's what we want. And this thing is the beef, man. I mean, a 5 mana, 6/6 that can only get better is really, really a bargain, especially for budget decks. And I think the card is great, and will only get better upon rotation when we lose things like Pelucranos and Hornet Queen and a couple of other things, you know, Arbor Colossus notably. So the card will get better upon rotation. People might actually start playing it, and people are playing it somewhat right now, but you only see it pop up occasionally. But I do like Colossus, especially something in this. This is a great 4th turn play for us. 2 copies of Stampeding Elk Herd, Hear Me Out. This is actually not a bad deal. 5 mana for 5 mana for 5 power is actually more than fair, especially since it's just a common. Obviously, if you run, you know, Surrak out 3rd turn and then this out the 4th turn, which is very easy to do with Whisperer, especially, then you can, you know, attack with a 5/4 and a 5/5, both of which trample, which is pretty darn cool on just the, you know, 4th turn. That's awesome. And both of those creatures, you know, or at least this and Outland Colossus, they both outclass Siege Rhino very often the turn after it comes into play. Stampeding Elk Herd, very good, especially in long, grindy games. Again, a good way to break a stalemate, because we have so many huge creatures, and if we can just give them all trample, it's usually game. 4 copies of Skysnare Spider. This dude continues to impress me just constantly. You can run this guy out on the 4th turn if you've, you know, played a good sequence with Whisperer of the Wilds, Whisperer and a Surrak or Temur Sabertooth, and then this. Oftentimes they'll drop on the 5th turn, which is still just fine. I mean, a lot of the dragons in the format that people are still playing, this doesn't really match up well to a Tarka, but him aside, this comes down usually the same turn that they come down, and is a great foil against those decks, and can attack into them and still block. That's very, very important. Feels like having a pumped up Sarah Angel comes out a turn earlier than it feels like it's fair to do that. And just is a great card, especially for budget decks. Really, really good option. We've all speculated, a lot of channels have, that this would see some standard play. And I think in a budget sort of borderline thing like this, FNME kind of deck, this is actually a fan-freaking-tastic option. Covers a lot of your butt. And to finish off the creatures, 2 Faux Razer Regen. I had a couple ideas at 7-drop creature position, including Gaea's Revenge. I think we'd still totally play that in this deck instead. And Sandstep Mastodon, which has a cool interaction with Temur Sabertooth, in that once you get to long game, you can just bolster 5 every single turn, which is pretty cute. But I do like Faux Razer in that we're not playing, you know, hardly any removal. We are a green deck, just mono green. So a good way to, you know, mid-game, take out a creature and leave a 4/5 flying body behind. Often, you know, obviously you're not going to trade. He's going to be a 6/7 flyer. You're going to leave that behind after basically Hero's downfalling something. So this is a great play. We're playing a whole 4 spells in the deck, 2 of which are Epic Confrontation. I would really like to play more of these, to be honest with you. I just want to play a lot of creatures. But there's probably things that could come out for this. Epic Confrontation is just premium removal. Every time I get it, I like it. I'm always impressed by it. It overperforms, honestly. It takes out almost everything in the format. Even if you just play, it on a small creature. The boost alone is enough to kill every important creature in Abzan or in aggro with pretty much every single one of our creatures, even our small guys. The card is really, really, really good, I think, and has never really failed to do what I want it to do. It is good removal, sucks it's sorcery speed, and it sucks you have to have a dude out, but hey, we're playing 33 creatures, we'll have a dude. Really do like this card. Here's where it starts to get slightly wonky, but we're only playing 2 more spells, so bear with me. We're playing 1 copy of Shamanic Revelation, which is an all-star. Again, 15 creatures with power 4 or greater, meaning that we will often gain at least 8 life off of this and draw a great number of cards. I mean, well, you know, if we got a couple of mana dorks and a couple of bigger dudes out there, we're drawing 4 cards and we're gaining like 8. So, really good card, especially in those turns where we start to need to refill our hand a little bit. And maybe against aggro, if we can play this 4th turn, we're only going to like gain 4 and draw like 3 cards, but still incredibly worth it even if it doesn't affect the board that turn. We are going to gain enough life to hang in there for a turn, and we've got a big creature out. So I know that these are situational things, but especially in late games, this can break the game completely wide open if you've got even just like 3 creatures with power 4 or greater. If you're in a stalemate of some kind, that extra life can really, really help you out, and that fistful of cards you'll draw is ridiculous. Refilling at that point in the game is very, very desirable. I love Shamanic Revelation in this. Here's a card that's very similar to Shamanic Revelation. It's even in the name. This is Nissa's Revelation, just the 1 copy of it. You could play another Shamanic Revelation, but I was just really interested in Nissa's Revelation. It turns out it is a fine card. A lot of the times you're going to draw or, you know, and gain 4 to 6 off of this. Drawing 4, gaining 4 to 6, you know, all that. These are all, this is always great. It's always good, even if you run it out late game. You're going to gain enough life, again, to stay in the game, usually for another turn, and draw a grip full of cards, one of which is a ballin'-ass creature. So there's nothing I don't like about the card other than it doesn't affect the board presence immediately. Neither does Shamanic Revelation, but we have to wait like a whole 2 more turns for this on curve, which is kind of meh. But we're doing a lot of mid-range things, and I like the ability to refill our hand and stabilize our life total against a lot of the decks in the format, so I went with these. Here's the lands. Yeah, I'm playing 2 Thornwood Falls. What of it? You can play your favorite green gain land, or you can just play Forest instead. The reason I did that is we only have 2 1-drops in the deck, 2 Honored Hierarchs, so these could function as our, you know, basically 2 other 1-drops, and that's good against aggro. We need all the help we can get against aggro. It really, really is a bad matchup. So if we can just negate 1 attack, or even half of an attack from aggro, that buys us time, and that is something. And as a 1-drop, I'll take 1 life. Dude, that's fine with me. You don't have to do this, but I think it's an interesting strategy, and I think it does work for the deck a lot of the time, considering it's so deficient of 1-drops. So I like it. It's worked for me so far, but you could just play Forest. The Rogue's Passage, however, I think is very important. Here's the sideboard, which is fairly standard, I think, but I do want to talk about a couple of cards, namely Aerial Volley. I think this may be a very important card going forward. I love that it's instant speed, too. That seems insane, honestly. Mitigates the damage from Hangerback Walker dying, which is really cool, and mitigates damage against the Thopter decks. You can also play Windstorm in this, I think. That would not be in any way bad, but I voted for Aerial Volley here. I think that it's just, you know, a little bit better, and that it will only ever cost us the 1 mana and not 2. So, and that is surprisingly important when you're playing huge creatures and you want to play them on curve all the time. So Aerial Volley I think is actually really good. And finally, throw up the power rankings right here where I talk for just a second about not only the cards I wanted to play and didn't, but also the cards you could play if you had a couple of bucks. I thought that Glade Watcher was an interesting metagame pick against red aggro decks, and we can make it attack later on in the game, not even that much later. And I thought that Highland Game was actually an interesting card, again, a good metagame choice against these red aggro decks. You can usually block and trade with a guy and gain 2 life, negating the damage from another creature swinging through. So I think that Highland Game is actually an interesting pick, especially for budget decks, as sort of an option against aggro out of the sideboard. If you have money, the deck wants Nissa really, really, really bad. Like the deck wants Nissa more than anything. I talked about we're sort of 3-drop deficient earlier, because Nissa is just, she gets the land drop that the deck very much wants. We gotta have those drops. And not only that, she becomes a big creature, win condition, and card advantage engine in her own right late in the game. This is just insane in something like this, and it's tailor-made for her. So if you have bucks, play the Nissa, because she is absolutely perfect in this. Also, Den Protector and Death Mist Raptor, that old combo, but I think Den Protector more so than Death Mist, although I would want to play at least 2 Death Mist, if not 3. But Den Protector is really good in helping us go long, helps us against control, get our dudes back. Just, I mean, we all know what Den Protector does. Very, very good green card, and if we have money, we should totally put it in this deck somewhere. We should find room for it, I think. Well, yeah, let's talk about the power rankings for just a second here. For a budget deck, this is not bad. A final score of 56, which is a pretty darn high score for something like this. Versatility, that's a 5, yes, but that's only because our aggro drags down that number so much. We're very good against a lot of the other things in the format, it turns out. I like the deck a lot. There are low numbers. Resiliency, we're not that great. Throw in Den Protector will be much, much better. And then consistency, we're actually a very, very consistent deck. We almost always get our mana dorks. We almost always throw, big creatures out a turn before we're, supposed to do it fairly. So, the deck does what it does almost every time. And I really, really had so much fun playing this deck. I actually had a whole other, sort of +1/+1 counter-based mono-green budget thing with Hardened Scales, Avatar of the Resolute, Servant of the Scale, Saltworm Quartermasters, a bunch of cards. Let me know if you want to see that. I think that deck's not bad at all. And then finally, I've gotten 2 requests for it, and I really want to do it. It's really, really hard, but I'm trying to think of things. The Great Aurora. I really want to make this deck really bad. I don't know what we're supposed to do with it, but I want to try. So remember, please, if you enjoyed the content, makes sense, share. Sharing is awesome. Sharing is caring, you guys. It helps us out so much. Comment, because we like to hear from you. We like to talk to you. And of course, subscribe if you haven't done that yet, because we do these videos 3 or 4 times a week, and they're always pretty good. I'm an objective judge of the quality of my videos, right? Yeah. In any case, I'm Dev from SBMTG, man. I hope y'all enjoy this deck. My favorite budget deck in a long time. Thank you for watching, my wizards.